Hi, I'm Valeria, and let's get those books together. Here's my March wrap-up. In total, in March I read 10 books, of which 4 were non-fiction books and 6 fiction books. March was quite a wild ride. It started normally, going to work, going for vacation, enjoying vacation, and then our flights were cancelled. We needed to find the shortest flight back home. We managed to get on this flight, we managed to land, everything's happy. But going back here, the life here is quite different right now. Everybody is trying to self-isolate. I'm actually self-isolating. I need to work from home, but there is a problem when you work from home. There's too many temptations around. There is Netflix, there is PlayStation, there are books, there's food. So quite challenging times are coming. The first book I'm going to talk about is a book about expedition, my favorite topic, and it's called Endurance, the Shackleton's Legendary Antarctic Expedition, written by Caroline Alexander. The expedition was taking place in the beginning of 20th century during the First World War. The goal of the expedition was to cross the Antarctic continent from one side to another, and it didn't happen because they just stuck in ice on their ship Endurance, and they stayed on the ship until it got crushed by ice and sank. From this point, they needed to survive. And the book is mostly focuses on challenges that they encountered during those winter and summer months, and also on relationship between team members. Another part of the book that I really liked is about how Shackleton got people into the team when he was interviewing them. And one of the main things that he was focusing on was not just to get people with a good scientific background, but people who are good with other people, who can sing, play banjo, or just like be nice people in general. And needless to say, I love this book. I think it was one of the best books I read this month. From non-fiction section, definitely the best one. And I can't recommend enough to read it. If you love expeditions, you must read it. If you don't care about expeditions, still I would advise you to read it because it's something nice to explore. The next book I read this month was Ask Me About My Uterus by Abby Norman. This book is about author's experience with endometriosis and a struggle to get a proper diagnosis. The big chunk of the book is also focused on her relationship with her mother and the problems in those relationships that led her to become an emancipated minor. As well, a lot in this book is also dedicated of author's struggle to get a normal life while being in constant pain. In the end, I would say my impressions of the book are neutral because I expected to have like more scientific information and about current development about endometriosis and attempts to fix it. But I got more a memoir. So I would not strongly recommend this book, but I also would not discourage you from reading it. As I was on vacation, I decided to pick up something that would bring me into vacation mood. So I picked up a book called Bella Figura, How to Live, Love and Eat the Italian Way by Kamin Mohammadi. This book is a memoir journal by an author, a young woman who moves to Florence from London for 1 year. And this is her experience of Italian food, Italian people, and Italian men. I especially like the part about food. Also, the author put some recipes there, and the description she puts about how this food is cooked and how people eat it, it just brings you back to Italy, and you can enjoy the sun, the taste, like olive oil, pasta. Amazing. Next part is people. So when author moved from London to Florence, she felt how life slowed down and how more relaxed and chilled people are there. And she's also getting into this mood and vibe. It's also very pleasant to share these feelings with her. And the last part is about men. Yes, so it wasn't my favorite part, as you can say. I'm not a big fan of romance in general, and quite often something that is pictured as a very romantic, I see it's very unhealthy and toxic. Yes, this part didn't please me a lot, but yeah, there's happy ending there. So because it's a light holiday read, and I would still recommend you this book. Just don't pay lots of attention to romance part. Focus on food. Next book I'm going to talk about appeared in my TBR list when I just started to living alone. And it's called Adulting, How to Become a Grown-Up in 468 Easyish Steps by Kelly Williams Brown. And yes, in my 30-something, it's perfect time to become an adult. What I expected from this book, I don't know, maybe some insights that I haven't yet discovered myself about how to live alone and be good at it. But 468, it was a bit too much, and I think it was a bit like stretched. A lot of things in this book was more like cultural specific. There was a lot of mentions about how to write cards about every single small things to your friends. And they were in this like, American cheesy-ish way with a lot of like sparkles and happiness. And yes, I didn't feel related or that I need to do to be adult. It feels more about being in college. The good parts in this book were also present. There was about how to set up your apartment, how to set up your kitchen, how to rent an apartment, how to move in another place. But to be honest, I didn't feel that it's very good material for the book. It could be just like a couple of articles, very useful and to the point. So I would say I was slightly disappointed into it. So if you're curious about these things, better Google them and don't spend your time on reading the book. Now it's time to start with the fiction section. And first, the fiction book that I read this month was Tales from Moominvalley by Tove Jansson. This is a collection of short stories about Moomin family and other inhabitants of Moominvalley. Those short stories, they can make you feel warm, sweet, and happy. And I highly encourage you to read this book, especially in the times of quarantine when things may be a bit sad. This book will cheer you up. Next book I read this month is Xenocide by Orson Scorecard, and this is the third book in the Anders Saga series. This is a science fiction novel, and it's not a standalone novel, so if you haven't read previous books, start with them. So the main point of this book is not like some action, but it is exploring a lot of philosophical and ethical questions about what problem will occur if our civilization finds another civilization, and how to figure out the differences between the cultures, and what if something that is vital for one civilization is deadly for another one, and trying to bring those things together and learn to live in peace and harmony. I'm putting it like very simple, but in the book it's explored in a more deep way. It's a very thick book. It's not very fast-paced, but you will still enjoy it if you like to use your brain and think of this kind of questions. So yes, I really enjoyed it. I'm going to continue reading the series. There is a last book left. I think I'm going to read it this year, definitely. And I would recommend you to start also reading the series, starting like with Ender's Game, and continue with Children of the Mind, Xenocide, and so on. Next book. This book is written by Karen Maitland, and it's her debut novel called Company of Liars. The action takes place in the 14th century during the time of the Black Plague. It follows a group of people, 9 people. They were complete strangers to each other, but circumstances brought them together, and they're on the road trying to run away from the plague. they all hiding something behind them. They're all not completely honest with each other, and this honesty brings a lot of trouble to them. So basically, the book, it's about revealing those secrets and how deadly these secrets can be in a certain environment. The ending of the book was a bit disappointing, but just slightly bit. In general, I enjoyed the book. It's very atmospheric. It's about medieval times, and it focuses a lot about how superstitious people are, how important religion was at those times, and how Black Plague brought all the fears of people up, how hateful they became towards strangers or foreigners. So that was quite captivating read. Even though when I picked this book up, I didn't know that it was about the plague. I was thinking like about it as a sort of like road story during medieval times. And then surprise, epidemic. So yes, if you're a bit anxious person, maybe it's not the best read to pick up during pandemic times, but it's definitely entertaining. So if it doesn't stop you, go on and read it. Next book I read is a book by Swedish author Majgull Axelsson, and it's called Ice and Water, Water and Ice. I read it in Russian translation, and I'm not sure that it is translated to English, but I hope it will be one day. It starts on the ship, which is going to the Northwest Passage. It is a sort of like Arctic expedition, and the ship is full of scientists, but there is also the main heroine, which is a writer. She's writing crime stories, and she is very popular in Sweden. Then there's something started happening on the ship that bothers her, and this is what makes her go back to the past in her mind, remembering her mother, her aunt, and the whole story of the family. So at this point, the book becomes not about the expedition itself, but it becomes a family saga of a 3 generation of women. And main action then takes place in Sweden during 60s time, and all these like musical groups, some political movements, and our heroine, she's a young girl at those times. She has a cousin, a brother. They're very close. He becomes a popular superstar. And from then on, the action starts taking place. And something happens that reflects during whole of her life. I really loved this book. It's not an easy or typical read. It's not very linear, but it brings a lot of questions about young women coming of age, becoming strong one, and sometimes to become strong, to take all your life and destiny back in your hands, there can be a lot of time and a lot of action that you would need to do for that. Yes. Do I recommend it? Not for everybody. If you like a bit twisted read, something that plays with your brain and mind, then yes, you definitely like it. But if you like something straightforward, then yes, you may be disappointed. Next book I read this month is a book by my new favorite author, Alice Smith. It's called Spring. It's a 3rd part of a seasonal quartet. The last part of the seasonal quartet is coming out this summer, and I can't wait. The Spring is not a very long book, and it's not very eventful, but that is not the point. It focuses mainly on some problems that we have nowadays, something that bothers society, bothers mind. For example, Spring is mainly focuses on a refugee problem. But it not just like bombs you with all the hard stuff that is going on. It also connects those things with an art, and some deep feelings that we have inside. It's also not talking like very straightforward to you. It presents those things through the metaphorical way. So, for example, we are following a young woman who just started working at the detention center for refugees. And one day she meets a little girl, like 10, 12 years old, who brings her on a journey to another part of the country. They just talk on the train, and through their dialogues, you get some insights on things that you can see on the news that are very dry there, but that what Alice Smith is writing, that makes you thinking. I will also put down there in the description for the video a link to the article that Alice Smith wrote while talking to people who went through these detention centers. It's a very captivating story, and I really recommend you to read it. Next book I read this month is The Little Friend by Donna Tartt. It starts with the murder of a 9-year-old boy during the family celebration, and his killer was never found. From that moment on, the story follows his family 11 years after the event. His mother is still in a deep depression, never recovered. His middle sister is very sleepy, very distant, and the little sister is feeling alone and left in this world. But she's a very smart girl, very active. She likes to read a lot of books, and apparently she has a very good imagination. She also is doesn't have enough attention from people around her, even though she has a lot of aunts, but they just prefer to leave it to her family. Like, you have your mother. Yeah, even though the mother is not really capable of taking care of herself. So we're following Harriet and how she tries to find who killed her brother. She also wants to revenge him. She's just 12 years old, so of course she's not like a professional investigator, and don't expect it to be a crime story. It's not. It's a real drama, a personal drama of a kid who doesn't have enough love in her family and enough understanding. It's not an easy read, it's not a fast-paced read, even though in that it picks up the pace, but it's quite enjoyable, I would say, because the language it's written, Donna Tartt is a master. Her books are always special. So if you want to read something thick, something that would take you for a week at least of your time and would make you think of like complicated stuff about family relationships, yes, that's a book to pick up. That was it. That was my March wrap-up. Thank you for staying with me, and welcome to my channel. Get your books together.